Hi everyone! For my section, I'll be covering mobile UI and UX basics. This section is part of our training presentation on mobile UI and UX and the belonging design framework. The goal of this section is to help future interns understand how to design mobile tools that are simple, clear, and easy to use. When interns create forms, portals, trackers, dashboards, or other digital tools, the design should not only look good, it should also help users complete tasks without confusion. In this section, I'll explain what UI means, what UX means, why mobile design matters for interns and nonprofits, and common mobile design mistakes to avoid. By the end of this section, interns should understand the basic difference between UI and UX. They should also understand why mobile design matters, especially in nonprofit and internship settings where people may be working remotely or checking information from their phones. Another goal is for interns to recognize common design problems. For example, a mobile tool can become difficult to use if the text is too small, buttons are unclear, the layout is crowded, or there are too many steps. The main takeaway is that good mobile design should make the user's next step obvious. A user should be able to open the tool and quickly understand what they need to do. UI stands for user interface. UI is everything the user sees and interacts with on the screen. For a mobile tool, this includes buttons, colors, icons, menus, text boxes, forms, screens, and the overall layout. For example, if an intern is using a mobile check-in form, the UI includes the name field, the project update box, the drop-down options, and the submit button. Good UI should be clear and simple. Users should not have to guess where to click or what a button means. The screen should guide them naturally. For example, a button that says submit update is clearer than a button that only says go. A label that says enter your project status is clearer than a blank box with no instructions. The purpose of UI is to make the tool easy to understand visually. UX stands for user experience. UX is how the tool feels to use. While UI focuses on what the user sees, UX focuses on whether the user can complete the task easily. UX asks questions like, is this process simple? Does the user know what to do next? Is the tool helpful or frustrating? Does the user feel confident after submitting something? A simple way to explain the difference is this. UI is the submit button. UX is whether the user feels sure that the form was actually submitted. For example, if a user clicks submit and nothing happens, that creates a bad experience. They may wonder if the form worked or if they need to submit it again. A better experience would include a confirmation message that says, your update was submitted successfully. So UX is not just about making something look nice, it's about making the entire process feel clear, useful, and supportive. Why mobile design matters for TLT nonprofits. Mobile design matters because many users will access tools from their phones. Not everyone will be sitting at a computer when they need to complete a task. For interns, this could mean submitting hours, checking project instructions, sending updates, or accessing resources from a phone. For nonprofit staff or volunteers, this could mean filling out forms quickly, reviewing information during a busy day, or staying connected while working remotely. If a tool is not mobile friendly, users may struggle to read the text, tap the right buttons, or complete the form correctly. That can lead to missed updates, mistakes, or frustration. Mobile-friendly design helps make the process faster and easier. It also makes the organization look more professional because the tool feels organized and reliable. For TLT, this connects directly to leadership, teamwork, and communication. Good design helps people participate more easily. There are several common mobile design mistakes that interns should avoid. The first mistake is tiny text. If users have to zoom in to read instructions, the design is not mobile friendly. The second mistake is unclear buttons. Buttons should explain the action. Instead of saying click here, the button should say something specific like submit form, save progress, or view tasks. The third mistake is too many steps. If users have to go through too many screens or answer unnecessary questions, they may get frustrated or stop using the tool. The fourth mistake is poor contrast. Text needs to be easy to read against the background. A design can look nice, but if the colors make the words hard to see, then the design is not effective. Another mistake is crowding too much information onto one screen. Our mobile space is limited, so the design should focus only on what the user needs most. A good rule is, if the user has to guess, zoom, or reread too much, the design needs improvement. Before submitting a mobile project, interns can use a simple checklist. First, ask, can the user understand the screen in a few seconds? The purpose of the page should be clear right away. Second, is the text large enough to read on a phone? Third, are the buttons easy to tap and clearly labeled? Fourth, is the task as short as possible? The tool should only ask for information that is actually needed. Fifth, does the page work on users with different technology comfort levels? Not every user will have the same experience with digital tools, so the design should be simple and supportive. Sixth, does the tool give confirmation after the user completes an action? For example, after submitting a form, the user should see a message confirming that it worked. This checklist helps interns review their own work before sharing it with others. To wrap up my section, mobile UI and UX basics are about clarity, usability, and making digital tools easier to use. UI is what the user sees and taps. UX is how the experience feels while they're using the tool. When both are done well, users can complete tasks with less confusion and more confidence. This connects directly to the next part of the presentation, which is the belonging design framework. Once we understand how to make a tool clear and easy to use, we can also think about how to make sure users feel included, supported, and not left out. That is where accessibility, digital inclusion, and user-centered thinking become important.
Hi, so this is the Belonging Design Framework section, where you will learn how to design digital tools that are inclusive, accessible, and universal. So here are the learning goals for this section. So you should learn about the different aspects of belonging. You should be able to explain the difference between accessible, inclusive, and universal design. You should be able to identify how belonging design framework can be implemented and explain why belonging design matters. And the main idea is that this framework allows users to feel included and provides everyone the same opportunities. Firstly, what is belonging? It's a feeling that we should provide to the user through our design. Here's mainly what belonging encompasses: inclusion, when everyone feels valued and feels like they belong; equity, where everyone can meet the same goals with the resources provided to them; recognition, when someone or their group is acknowledged and recognized; agency, when everyone has the power to act and the power to have influence. We will mainly focus on equity and inclusion for our section, but keep in mind that there are multiple aspects of creating belonging. Next, we'll talk about design specifically and the different types of designs that encompass belonging. First, there's accessible design. It focuses on disabled users and providing them with accommodations. Then there's inclusive design. It focuses on including not only disabled people, but also including social groups, like people of different ethnicities, ages, people who speak different languages, and people of different genders. Finally, there's universal design. It doesn't create specific accommodations. It is a design that can be used by anyone, and it can encompass both inclusive and accessible design. All of these types of designs attempt to meet user needs and provide belonging in different ways. Here we will go even deeper on accessible and inclusive design and explain how belonging design is implemented. So with accessibility, we want to meet accessibility standards, and we want to ensure the user can use the design with at least one of their senses. So if they cannot see, they can use a screen reader. Next, we want to ensure that the design is operable with a keyboard, mouse, or pointer, and they can navigate with only one of these if needed. We also want to ensure that the content is easy to understand and that the design is robust, or that it can work with the technology needed for accommodations. With inclusivity, we want to ensure that different user groups are represented. You should provide control to the users, like changing the appearance. You should provide multiple options, like multiple age ranges when filling out a form. And you should have consistency with other websites or apps. Here are some specific examples of accessible design. On the left, there is an image of a link with different colors and contrast showing whether the user has hovered over the link, used their keyboard to select it, or have clicked on it. These differences place emphasis on the interactable link and make it easy to understand if it is being interacted with and how. And on the right, there is a form with errors displaying. Not only are there error messages at the top, but there are red highlights around the forms that are incorrectly filled out. This provides the user feedback in multiple ways, not only in colors but also in text, so that they can fix their mistakes easily. In addition to accessible design, here are some examples of inclusive design. So on the left, there is an example of inclusive design, allowing the user to change the appearance of how their emails are displayed. Providing them control is one way to make the user feel included. Another way is with the example on the right, where the user has a satisfactory amount of options for referring to themselves, but not too many that it becomes cluttered and difficult to understand. So why does this matter? As you can see, 1 in 6 people globally experience some form of disability, which is a large portion of the population. Many of them use technology, and using this framework can allow you to reach more users. And of course, you are able to improve the overall experience of the user. And you are also able to comply with laws and standards for accessibility. This concludes the Belonging Design Framework section, where you learned about the importance of belonging and how it can be implemented in your designs. The next section provides even more examples of good UI and UX, so you can combine what you learned in the previous sections and see how it should be implemented.
In this section, you'll learn about the 10 principles of good design. You'll be able to explain UI patterns and describe good UX patterns. The 10 principles of good design were created by Dieter Rams. Good design is subjective, but Rams attempted to express the most important principles that he learned in his career. They include: good design is innovative, it makes a product useful, it's aesthetic, it makes a product understandable, is unobtrusive, honest, long-lasting, thorough down to the last detail, environmentally friendly, and as little design as possible. Let's take a look at some examples in practice. On the right, you'll see an example of bad UI. It has too many options and doesn't really convey what the meaning of the button is to the user. On the left, we see an example of good UI. It's clear, concise, and it conveys that it's a button meant to do an action. Similarly, we see an issue on the right with too much information in the text box. The cancel and create options are also obfuscated at the end. On the left, we see an example of good UI in practice. There's clear delimitation between what it's doing, the description, and the buttons at the bottom have clear actionable meaning to them. Similarly, we have an example of a drop-down list. On the right, there are many options that overwhelm the user and can come off as repetitive. On the left, the options are more limited and make more sense to the user. Now let's look at an example in the real world. On the left, we have an example of an eyewear glasses company. It's a busy design and it can confuse the user. On the right, there's a more modern and simplistic approach to UI design. There are clear delimitation between what the pictures and buttons do. There is unique styling between men, women, and overall, it follows a theme throughout. Now, this doesn't mean that it's without fault, but that it follows better UI design in practice. Now let's take a look at UX, where we have an example by Don Norman, where it's all about doors. Don Norman believes that if a door has a handle, it intuitively implies that a door is meant to be pulled. But oftentimes you'll see a door and it's pushed. And this is the idea behind understanding good UX. Are you conveying to a user and do they understand the action that's meant to be taken? Let's take a look at UX in practice. Here's a button by Adobe. It saves the file. On the right, it's a bad button because when the user clicks it, they don't receive any feedback that the file is saved, so they don't know that the file is saved. On the left, we have an example of a good button. When the user clicks the button, there will be an animation or confirmation that the file is saved. This is a very simplistic idea of UX in action. Now let's take a look at some good and bad designs for UX. A bad example is by WhatsApp, where they have a delete message feature. When the user presses this button and deletes the file, the other user in the conversation is alerted that the message has been deleted. This is a little unintuitive and unintentional for the user. They expect the message to be deleted without alerting the other user, most likely because they made a mistake when they sent the message initially. Another example of poor UX design is something we see more and more of today, and that is auto-playing videos. Netflix, in this case, only autoplays when the user is hovering over the video. However, this can be unwanted by many users and considered a nuance or distraction. Some examples of good UX design is Zoom and its interface. Not only does it employ good UI design by being simple, but it also has great UX design by automatically surfacing users who are speaking at the time and moving them to the background when they're finished. It's very intuitive to the user and happens automatically like magic, and that is the essence of good UX in practice. Similarly, we can look at Duolingo, that is very fun and flashy and captivating for the user. At the same time, the UX is rewarding, engaging, and it's clear to the user what they're doing, what language they've selected, and which path they're taking as they learn and progress. So what does it all mean, UI and UX and practice? Well, if we look at it from Ram's approach, where he was aware that he was playing an important role when creating his 10 principles of UI, we can see that we're helping to create industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We're pushing sustainable cities and communications and climate action, which was something that Rams pioneered for the time. We're looking at working with partners to achieve the goal that we set out. And last, and maybe most importantly, we're looking out for good health and well-being of the user, because that's where it matters. What the user is clicking, what they feel, does it make sense? That is the essence of good UI and UX design. I hope you learned something today and can apply this to any projects or even your own company that you're working with. Thank you so much, and take care.